everyone. My name is Sam. I am the new 9th District Democratic Party intern, and welcome to episode 2 of Candidate Conversations. Today, I am joined by Tiffany Grant, candidate for House District 60. So, Tiffany Grant, a born and raised Hoosier living in Martinsville, is running to represent District 60. Tiffany has dedicated her whole life to serving her community in many capacities, and in her own words, it's the only thing she could ever imagine doing. Through her work as a teacher at Martinsville High School and through faith-based organizations, Tiffany has grown her love for helping others and developing strong relationships within the community. If elected to the state legislature in November, Tiffany will be a voice for the voiceless, advocating for public education reform, improved healthcare access, and strengthened protections for civil rights, just to name a few policy points. Tiffany, it's so great to meet you, and I'd like to thank you for being here today.
It's great to be here.
Awesome. So I always like to start off by asking my guests, what inspired you to run for office?
Absolutely. So part of that story does have to do with the musical Hamilton. I saw it last Christmas, December, before everything shut down. And one of my favorite songs in that show, which I have used numerous times since then to kind of get myself up off the couch and getting to work, is The Room Where It Happened. And it's talking about, there's this space and these 3 men went in and made this big deal that benefited the people in the room. And they came out and the deal was made and nobody knows what happened in that room. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be in that room. And I paired that with last November. Last November, I went to the State House with 15,000 of my closest teacher friends. And we shouted and we advocated for better spending on public education. And we were not listened to. They did not hear us. If they did hear us, they ignored it and did nothing to help. And so between those two pieces, I decided I wanted to be in the room where it happened, but I also want everyone to know exactly what happens in that room. So I want it to be a transparent experience, because I think what happens right now is that stuff happens at the State House. A lot of stuff happens at the State House. And then the rest of us are out here just surviving, making ends meet, trying to get it done. And we don't know what's going on in that room. And a lot of times it feels like the people working in the State House don't know what it's like for the rest of us. There's this disconnect. And so for me, running for office meant that I could make that connection between the room where it happens and all the rest of us who either don't have access to that room because of our own financial situation. We work full-time jobs. We don't have time to figure it out. We work 3 part-time jobs just to get food on the table for our kids. We need that connection back. The State House and what they do there impacts every life day to day. And we just don't have time to pay attention. And so I would like to get there, provide that transparency, but then also make policy that allows people to have time, interest, energy to know what's going on in the State House. For me, that's just necessary. If something in our lives is going to impact us that greatly, we need to understand it better, and we need to really know what people are doing on our behalf.
I definitely agree with that, and I think that's something that resonates with a lot of voters. I mean, I hear that when I'm canvassing, when I'm phone banking, and it's something that I feel myself. So I'm grateful to have candidates like you that are running for that, and also love the Hamilton reference. And so moving on, from your time as a teacher, what do you think is the biggest challenge faced by teachers today, and how do you plan to fight for that change in the State House?
Yes. So for me, the biggest challenge is a balance of priorities. So the state and how they apply funding and evaluations, they are prioritizing high test scores, and they are prioritizing quantifiable data on evaluations. And by that, I mean, did they see something written on the wall in the classroom? Check yes or no. Did they see students actively engaged? And so out of a class of 20, if they saw 15 students actively engaged, you get a 75%. They're looking very specifically at numbers. That's the state priority. Teacher priorities, what we would love for those priorities to be is about actual learning, love of learning, students mastering material that is valuable to their lives, and a quality of communications, a quality of community and relationships. Those are very hard to evaluate in a numeric way. And so the state tends toward that very number-based. And as a math teacher, I like number-based. Please don't get me wrong. But education is so much more than numbers on a paper. And that is what it has become for the state. And so for me, that is the biggest challenge. Ultimately, it is about money. And I understand that 50% of the state budget is public education, or is education. They've siphoned some of that off for private vouchers and charter schools. But a huge chunk is still public education. And what I would like to do is to create policy that shifts from the punitive evaluation system that we have now, that punishes schools who have students with fewer resources coming to them, those rural communities that don't have the large tax base underneath them. And I would like to change those policies to really reflect the desire for high quality education. And that means we're providing equitable opportunities for every student in the school district. And that changes the calculation of how we spend money completely. We have to start focusing the resources to the schools that don't already have them. We have schools where parents can't provide school supplies. We have schools where parents can't pay for extracurricular activities. We have students who can't participate in sports and academic teams, not because they lack the talent or the interest, but because they just don't have the funding at home to get them involved. And so if we could realign how we spend money at the State House with a real focus on what should be, in my opinion, is high quality education at an equitable access point for every student, I think we would see academia in Indiana. I mean, public education would be amazing because we could really provide for students and teachers what they need.
That's incredible. Yeah, we definitely need exactly what you're saying. Coming from, I grew up with a mom who's an educator, and you know, she's teaching students who came out of these public school systems that are underfunded and just not being evaluated properly, and the students are suffering. And so I'm definitely grateful that you're trying to change that. And so my third question, oh God, no, sorry.
I was gonna say, absolutely. Students are more than a number on a page, and we need to look at them as whole people. And when we do that, we build better people and better communities.
Exactly. And so my third question, obviously 2020 has been a really exhausting year for all of us, and you've done it all while campaigning. What keeps you going when the going gets tough?
So I lost sight of this a little bit during quarantine. So school shut down for me mid-March, for most of us mid-March. My last day in the building was March 12th. And we didn't get back with students in the building until the end of August. So for those months, I lost a little bit sight of what kept me going. And that is the students. Like, I didn't remember how much I needed them on a day-to-day for my own mental health and well-being, for my own emotional sanity. I need students. And a great example of this is actually this past Friday. Friday was homecoming for Martinsville. And we could not have a pep session, obviously. So we had a virtual pep session. And so on every screen in the building, we projected a YouTube video, essentially. And we saw the dance team perform, and we listened to the band, and they played the school song. Teachers had a lip sync battle. Like, it was great. But at the very beginning of this pep session, as in all pep sessions, we stood for the national anthem. And so we're all standing. I'm in the back where my teacher desk is, and we're facing the front left corner where the flag is by the door. And I'm standing there, and I have smaller classes right now, so about 18 students in front of me, and the music is playing, and we get to the line, the Rockets' Red Glare. And it's happening right now. Like I got those chills, right? Where your hair stands up and it, like my whole scalp. And I'm looking at these kids who are standing in front of me, facing the flag, super respectful. Man, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. These kids deserve a world full of opportunities. And those opportunities need to be independent of the resources they were provided at birth. I have students in that room who were born into family with resources. And I have students in that room who were born into families who struggle. And they're surviving, they're making it work, but they don't have the opportunity to thrive in a way that I was able to growing up, that other students are able to in their home lives just by where they were born. And so I looked at these kids and I can't help but want to work for them, to get our world to a place, to get Indiana to a place where they can come out of high school, potentially trade school after that or college, and be able to live a life where they feel like they can meaningfully produce or meaningfully contribute to society, be part of that active community in a way that they want to be, and not leave high school and then work 3 jobs, maybe have a family, and scrape by every day to provide for them. That is not what I want for my students. And so just thinking about them, right? Like when I grade their papers or when I'm talking with them in class, when I'm looking at this part of their faces while I teach algebraic proofs to geometry students, that's what keeps me going. There's more work than I can do in a day, but if I've done the best I can to get them where they need to be, I've succeeded.
That's amazing. I can hear how passionate you are in your voice. I can see how passionate you are in your face. And I'm so glad that educators like you exist, because those are the educators that changed my life and are going to keep changing other people's lives. And so I just have one final question. So I've read on your website that you're dedicated to getting younger generations involved in the political process. And as a college student that spent the last year trying to do just that, I'm really thrilled to have candidates like you that are so invested in the youth. And I'm wondering, what's your vision for helping young people get passionate about making political change and finding their voice?
I appreciate that question. In my own experience, I just recently became active politically. So 2 years ago, I would never have dreamed to be in this conversation right now. It was never even in my mind that I would be working for advocacy in this arena, right? I advocate for students and I advocate for families in education, but to really be doing it politically was not on the radar at all. But by doing it that way, I also spent the last 20 years not being actively engaged in a system that affects my daily life. And so, and even maybe less so my life because of the privilege that I was born into, but the people around me whom I love, their lives, right? So there are people who are born just by virtue of who they are, unfortunately don't get the same rights and privileges that I do, whether they're whether they're people of color, they're part of the LGBTQIA plus community, they just don't have those same rights and privileges that I do in the state of Indiana, and that needs to change. So what I would like to see is students, college students, young adults, really be engaged in the system that affects their daily lives. And that's just a piece I didn't understand. So I don't know if it comes from not paying attention in government class, which I will admit is probably part of the case. But we need everyone to understand that it does impact their lives. And when you wait until you have time to be invested, and oftentimes that is post-career and in retirement, we see a lot of older people who are engaged and invested in politics because they understand at that point how it does impact them so greatly. But if we can get the younger age groups also engaged actively, we're going to see better benefits, better policy for younger people because they will be advocating for themselves. And I just think that's really critical. We could see lower tuition rates, right? We could see more options for free education post K to 12. We could see better healthcare benefits for younger adults who maybe don't have the opportunity to stay on their parents' insurance until age 25. Those are real issues that college students, young adults are facing, and the government could be helping them, but sometimes I think those issues get overlooked because young adults are not actively engaged in the process. So to answer that question, two pieces are really critical. One is that we help young adults understand how their lives are impacted by government. They're not just floating along separate of government policy, but that the two are very connected. And the second is really promoting that value of self-advocacy. That's one thing that I love about a number of my students. Man, when they have a question, they ask it. If they don't understand my answer, they ask it again, and they really press me to make sure to explain it in a way that it makes sense to them and that they are in a better position. Young adults are good at that. They know how to ask for what they want. We just need them to do that in the government, like in the political system. And we would see better policy for all the generations, not just the older ones that are already politically active.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. I think that's so needed. And I definitely agree if younger people were more involved, then we'd see more benefits to society. Well, anyway, that's all that I have, but it was so great getting to meet you and talk to you. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. It was good to talk to you.